Hi, Martin. Thank
Hi,
you very
Maggie.
much for joining me today. So this is my YouTube channel that I'm starting right now in 2024, and it's called Awaken the Warrior Within. And it's going to talk about all the things connected with healing, personal development, awakening, all the growth journey that many of us find ourselves in. And you are here as one of my first guests because I know you are on a similar journey. And with this like interview series that I'm planning to do, I'd like for I just like to bring a bit more awareness onto how this journey looks like for all of us, because many times we may have a different story, but really there's a lot of similarities. So my intention to interview you today is to talk about the origin story, how everything happened for you, and for myself and other people to maybe find similarities, even though we may be seemingly completely different. So thank you very much for joining me. Let's just start with can you tell us who you are, what's your name, where you're tuning in from, and what do you do?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Maggie. It's an honor and a privilege. My name is Martin. I am a life coach for gay men. I'm currently in San Diego, but I travel a lot, so who knows by the time that this is uploaded where I'll be. Um,
Mm-hmm. Exciting.
I'm originally from San Diego. I was born in Mexico, but I grew up in San Diego and I'm back, my hometown for a little bit. And, you know, it's been a crazy journey, right? Like life has brought me here. I don't know what exactly we'll get into, but just to dive into a little bit about what I do. Like I said, I'm a life coach for gay men. And so
Mm-hmm.
that is a big title, right? Or that's like a very broad title because what I do, and I'm sure what you do, it encompasses a lot, right? It's not like a
Yes.
real cookie cutter type of modality. And so I help usually gay men with limiting beliefs, with believing in themselves again, finding the courage, finding the authenticity, becoming the warrior, awakening the warrior within that has been, you know, sleeping for a very, very long time or kind of suppressed. And so I help, like I said, gay men, queer men. I'm pretty open, but that's usually who I attract,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm gay.
Okay. Yeah. Well, amazing. That's very cool what you do. So can you take us back to the beginning of your own journey, whether it started with the healing journey, or did you have like an awakening journey, or just a growth journey? What is the one moment in which you would describe as this, ground zero moment for you when you just started to evolve and live a bit differently?
Mhm.
Can you take us back and tell me a little bit about that?
I mean, there is like a point A and like a before and after, right? Where I've had like a spirit
Mm-hmm.
awakening, quote unquote. But I feel like my evolution, like now that I'm piece everything together, it all led up to that moment. So I'll tell you about that moment first. But it was during COVID, so during 2020. I had gone out to drinks with a friend who had previously had her spiritual awakening, and she was at that point, I'm not quite sure how far along she was, or how much
Mm-hmm.
stuff, right? But there was always like she was always throwing these little like nuggets at me, and I'm always like, okay, whatever, yeah, 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 I get it, I get it.
As you do when you know the journey yet, you
It
just
was,
dismiss it immediately.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. I always had an affinity, and I always was like interested in like spirituality and things like that. But I think I was always like, oh my God, I don't want to like the work seemed too hard, right? Or just like
Mm-hmm.
seen a side that I didn't like. But we had come back from drinks and we were hanging out at my house, and she puts on a show on Gaia. I don't know if I can say that. You can bleep that out. By Gaia, right? But the I can't remember the it was David Icke escaping the Matrix, right? And it was like these short, maybe like 10-minute videos of just different topics. And I remember that she put on the first one and it just explained, right, that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and it just explained everything about consciousness and what the Matrix is. And it just I remember like when this guy was explaining that, like everything
Mm-hmm.
kind of like aligned, and I felt I don't know, like all of my, like several of my timelines were like coming together, you know?
Yeah.
And so that was like the before and after, because at that moment I understood life in a completely different level, just totally different, like the automatic appreciation for life, and automatic, like almost like less pressure. It wasn't as serious, you know, because I always say like, oh, don't take yourself so seriously, but on the inside, it's I'm having a panic attack, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
when I was like, whoa, it's actually this is like a vacation for our body, for our souls, right? Or it's like school, whatever you want to call it. It's not. It was. I just had a complete 180, right, of how I was living life to then. Like growing up, I always had like a lot of, like I said, little, also more little nights. I was always super interested in this kind of stuff. Um, a couple of maybe like 2 years ago, was looking through like my parents' garage, and found a bunch of books that I had in high school, like that were about shamanism, consciousness, different kind, like the was it the Kabbalah,
Mm.
things like that, right? And I never read them, but those I was always drawn to things like that, right? And
Okay.
I always had a big imagination, and I grew up Catholic, right? So that
Same.
didn't jive with me at all, clearly, because
Same.
I was like, there's no way that this God is gonna make me like this and then tell me that I'm wrong. Fuck that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's no way.
As that, yeah, bleeping that one. Yeah.
I just didn't believe it, right? But I knew, like, I just observing the world, right? Like I said, I always had like just like curiosity about things. Like I knew there was something more, right? I also didn't believe that it was just like some big bang where we came from, when we did come from rocks, but you know what I mean? Like it was just like, not like a random thing. So
Mm-hmm.
there was a lot of that, right? And yeah, I guess that's
Okay.
almost like in
So
a
it was
nutshell.
literally just one little show that you watched, and all of a sudden you had like this big understanding that things can be different. And so, and then what happened after? Did you immediately change your life? Was it a process? Like, what is the next steps that you've taken after you had this epiphany?
Well, I feel like it was like a vacuum, you know, and because it was COVID, I had so much time to learn and research and just like sit with everything. So, I remember like days after that, it was like I was on ecstasy. Literally would walk out of my house floating. I felt so amazing. Like just like
Oh, that without the actual ecstasy, you just
without the
felt like you're
actual
on
ecstasy,
ecstasy.
yeah. Like I honestly felt like I was floating sometimes. I was just so happy
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it was almost like I said, like, and especially because it was like months into COVID when everybody was super, super,
Very heavy. Yeah.
yeah. And so I had found this thing that was going to like change my life, right? And so it was like a total 180. And so I learned a lot. It was just like information overflow. It was also when I got a TikTok. And so it was just like a lot. And I went through everything, right? Like I learned about everything, all the conspiracy theories and, I mean, some of them aren't conspiracy theories, right? But just learned about all of
Mm.
them. And so there was just a lot of learning. There wasn't me doing much because I had my spiritual awakening. I had been to therapy for just growing up gay, that big trauma bucket, right? There's like so many things
Yeah.
that involves. Um, I was so turned off by therapy because it just made me blame my parents. That's all they did, right? And maybe I looking back now, I had a shitty therapist, right? And
But
it,
you don't know it at the
I
time.
have
You
a
think
lot
this
of
is how it looks like, and like that's as far as you can go, and then that's it.
I have a lot of respect for the science, of psychotherapy and everything, but that it just didn't work for me, and I think it was because I was being pushed in a
Well, lucky
different.
there's plenty of other stuff out there. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and so I would I saw all these things, and I saw like the fun bright side of like the awakening, right, where it's like angel numbers and crystals and this and that and
Hmm.
but there's also a lot of the work, of the shadow work that you have to do, right? And really you're faced with all of your patterns, your past, your stories, and you really see how it's all brought you to where you are today. So I knew that
Yes.
at some point I was gonna have to start working on this, right? And so I did kind of dabble a little, right, with what little free content I could get online. And I was like, I'm not gonna get nowhere trying to do this on my own. And so I hired my own coach, John. At that point, I remember I said, okay, I need a coach and I want him to be, because I didn't even really know what coaches were right before Spiritual Awakening. Then
Yeah, yeah,
you have a coach for
totally.
everything now. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go with this because that they seem more relatable to me than a therapist, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, he has to be a gay man. Basically my only requirement.
Well, yeah,
And
you wanted to relate on a soul level, I suppose. So like that made sense.
makes sense, and it's just there's a certain kind of trust, right? That I know exactly,
Mm-hmm.
or that I know that he knows what I've been through.
Yeah, you don't need to explain certain things. You know that he will get it. Yeah, I get that.
And literally, like a day later, I found John on the Explore page, and 2 days later, he opened up spots for one-on-one coaching, which he didn't.
Amazing.
Like, wow, if I'm manifesting a coach,
Yeah.
how good I am going to be at manifesting other things.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Essentially, that's how it started, right? And I knew that I wanted to help people in one way. In all of my jobs that I've had so many different ones. I've always the red line through all of them have been that I've been helping others. So that's how I see it in my head, right? I used to be a wedding planner. I used to be a medical sales rep, which I still think I was helping people then, because people need
Yeah.
there's a diabetes pump. Um, and so I was like, okay, there needs to be a way that I can help people. And I was still not sure if I wanted to just work with gay men or just anybody in general. But um,
Mm-hmm.
I, heard online, and even John says this too, it's like you turn your pain into your purpose. And my biggest pain,
Yes.
my biggest theme of my life has been my sexuality. And so at that point, I was like, okay, I know that I have to help gay men. And so I'm just right now I'm helping them with all the things that I've been through already. And now more than ever, I think, because I have, been doing this for almost 4 years, right? The work, right? Or
The
working
work, yeah, yeah.
not as long. But now I see when people are like, oh, healing is a spiral, healing isn't linear, you think you get over something, but then it comes back again in a different way.
Yeah, there's layers, there's depth, yeah.
Now I see it, right? Now I see it because there's even recently, right? I've had to, I always thought, but I always believed in myself, right, to a certain extent. And then there was all this work that I
And
thought I
then
did.
imposter syndrome came.
There's the believing in myself to do the coaching, right? And like now it's like believing in myself. I've just made a big investment on something and recently, and I was like believing in myself to make that money back, essentially, right? And so there's just like
Mhm.
layers that you're like, oh, I thought I had already worked through that.
Yeah,
They just
yeah.
keep coming
So
back.
that leads me actually to the question, sorry, if I cut you off there. So yeah, like basically on our journey, there's a lot of limiting beliefs that pop up, a lot of challenges that pop up that you've already kind of touched upon. But what would you say it was your biggest limiting belief or the biggest challenge that kind of took you a little longer to overcome, or maybe you are still working through it? Was there one that stood out more than the others?
I think, I mean, maybe they just all kind of connect to the not feeling good enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
No matter which of my limiting beliefs I think about, they all kind of funnel into that one.
Worthiness.
I yeah, I mean there was just like so many things growing up where I felt like who I was I was like rejected for who I was and ostracized and like put aside and almost silenced, right? So growing up I had to maneuver around that. And I didn't even know that was a thing that I had been coping with silently and not so silently,
Mm-hmm.
like alcohol, drugs, whatever. Um, I didn't know that I was like doing it that way until recently, right? Until a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
You all see it and you're like, whoa.
And
Um,
then it's just like, you know, immediately why you did all those things, right? It's just like, of course, I
and
was
that's
trying
like
to
just
feel
like the
better.
first part, right? Like they say, awareness is just the first part. Then you actually have
Mm-hmm.
to do stuff to change it if you want to change it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the tool, even that limiting belief served me, right? Growing up because it protected me as a little kid.
Yes. Yes.
But then as an adult, it doesn't. It does the opposite. It's a little self-destructive.
Mm, beautiful. Yeah, I think worthiness issue is really embedded in a lot of us, if not all of us, I would even say. So that's a big theme of my healing journey as well, and I think a lot of people will relate,
Oh yeah.
regardless of gender or sexuality. Is just one way or the other. We are the love is conditional when we grow up, right? Like if you act a certain way, then you're praised. If you act the other way, then you are chastised, or something's wrong with you. And as a child, you just form those associations and you think that, everything is conditional. So you're not worthy unless you do something right. And then you may be worthy of love or worthy of acceptance or worthy of so many other things. So yeah, that's a, I think, big one for a lot of us.
Well, I always
Um,
say we all go through the same thing. It's just a different flavor, right? Like
yeah,
you want to like
exactly.
relate to anybody, right? And
Yeah.
it's the same for you, right? You can talk about the
Yeah,
victim.
totally. And funnily enough, I was super resistant to this idea that I am not worthy, because I've already, obviously, part of my protecting mechanism was to make myself confident in certain things, or have some accomplishment that then would make me feel more confident. So when I was like, forced to think that, I mean, not forced, but when I was like awakened to realize that, oh, maybe there's some worthiness issue there, I was really resistant to accepting it, because I've worked so hard to pretend that this is not an issue, or like, wrap my head around it. And then, so yeah, sometimes resistance on its own is our cue, and our cue to go there, that maybe there is something there. So in my personal story, the more resistant I was towards something, the more I needed to go there and unpack it, because that was where all the answers were lying to me, were lying for me to find and figure out.
Mhm.
um what was your biggest surprise or your biggest aha moment? Was there something that you were just like, oh my god, I can't believe this, my mind blown? um
Just in general, or with like all my
Well, with like during your journey, or during like anything that comes to your mind. Like, I know it's a very vague and broad question, but like, what surprised you that you were like,
I think maybe not a biggest surprise, but almost just like I didn't want to accept is because
yeah,
like what I had mentioned, like the therapist kind of got me in the mindset of blaming other people for my parents, especially for the way that I was.
mm-hmm,
And of course, they have certain amount of responsibility, right? They raised me, but then at a certain point,
you got to take your own responsibility. Yeah,
so that was, I think, the biggest like I had a lot of resistance, and it was more of like a
yeah.
why do I have to do that? Why can't they fix me?
Yeah, I think that's very common.
Yeah, and again, I was like, okay, I'm not gonna give my power away to my parents. I've been doing that all my life. I'm not gonna give away my
Hmm.
power to other men. I've been doing that all my life. So
Yeah,
it was almost, I guess it was like a shock, surprise, like I don't
yeah,
want
that
to
this
do
realization, oh, so it is not only my responsibility, but I can actually change it myself, kind of
it.
thing.
Yeah. Once you
Yeah,
make the decision though, like once you get in the like
yeah,
you have that mindset shift, there is like a certain amount of power that you really feel your power come back to you, right? When you say, okay, now
yeah,
I have all the power to change myself, right?
yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love when we use those words like you give your power away, you abandon yourself, or like you use those phrases that are really true, but we just don't see it that way because we're so used to being in this victim mentality, which is part of our programming, to always put the fingers, oh, this is the society's fault, or this is my parents' fault, or my ex-boyfriend was horrible, or this and that. And there's like zero power coming from you, because like it's just like you don't have the ability to change anything, which is absolutely bonkers, because it's completely the other way around, right? Like
Mhm.
everything is within you. You can make a decision, one decision that can completely change your life. So I love that. That was a big thing for me as well, just to like have this. And it's so empowering, right, to get into the place that you're like, well, no matter what, I know I can take a decision, make a decision. I can change my life. I can change myself. I can do whatever. Because like I'm strong enough, right? Like all of those epiphanies. So we need to, like, in our healing journey, what happens is many times we got to reinvent ourselves, or we start to see all those things happening and we're like, oh my God, like how could I be this person or that person? How could I do those things? So how was this transition for you from the old you to the new you? Like what things happened, what was maybe surprising or challenging in this transition? Are you still transitioning? Like how is this changing? You know, because it's a big thing to let go of the old and step into the new. So what's your take on it? What's your story there?
Yeah, I mean, it took me a bit to let go of my past, right? And I I'm sure it's like this for, other communities, but I was very comfortable in my patterns, very comfortable with
Mm-hmm.
coping mechanisms. And I think it's because it's so normalized in the gay community, right? To be sexually free and, go out every weekend and drink 10 days in a row and have these exuberant like vacations or like benders, you know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
all of that, right? Just to look for validation. And so instead of like completely doing away with everything, I try to be like, okay, I know myself. I can't just go cold turkey on everything. And so I started doing little by little, right? And so I first tried to like give up or like stop looking for the validation, right? And so I looked for places. I was like, okay, well, I'm still gonna do this, but like not, but do it in a way where I'm not doing it just to,
Easing yourself off. Yeah.
yeah, because like I said, it was just so comfortable for me to stay there, and I really don't know if I could have done it. Probably would I just kept going back if I just try to stay away completely, right? But the transition took a lot longer, right? And it's still, I mean, I still find that some patterns keep on coming back now. I think
Yeah.
now I notice them a lot faster than I did before. So
Yes.
there's,
Yes.
there's growth. Um, but I think, there was like a time where I wanted to almost be like, okay, I can still do this and be spiritual and do all this stuff, but and some people can, and that's their journey, right? I don't know. I can't judge, right? But for me, what I wanted to do and the way that I wanted to help people and the way that I want to show up and the way that I think just my body is asking of me now, I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't do all of that. I could not do all of that. I wish I could still go out and party and then come back and be fresh in the morning and good, but even if I woke up not tired, like
Yeah, it's your values as well. You know what that it wasn't some sort of a numbing coping mechanism. So once you see certain things, you really can't unsee them.
Mhm.
So you would just see it for falling back on your old patterns, which is what we are trying to break free of, right? We want to not perpetuate the patterns. And I absolutely relate to when you said that those things were keeping you in a comfortable place. Like I have so many coping mechanisms, and I was like, to the point that when I was like figuring all this out, I was like, I'm so proud of the coping mechanisms. Like some of them were healthier than the other, not all of them were healthy, but they kept me safe, they kept me protected, they were there for a reason. So you're kind of like sad to let them go as well, because they served you for so many years. So it's just a part of, like, almost as if you're breaking up with someone, or losing a friend, or something, because they were there for you so many years through so many things. But yeah, so to me, it's good to know your values, good to have some sort of a vision. And that kind of leads me to another question, because I think to get out of the old and step into the new, what helps us transition is having a vision, imagining who you want to be, what you want to create, what you're going to bring to the world. So do you have a vision, and what is your vision? Tell us about that.
I do, and it changes all the time, and maybe that's why
Yes, absolutely.
it's
It
taking
evolves with you.
yeah, it's taking me longer to manifest, right, or to make it into reality. But I think ideally, I want to, and this is my vision just for my purpose, right? I think I have
Hmm.
visions for different aspects of my life, but for
Yeah, let's talk about the one connected with your coaching and with changing humanity, I suppose.
yeah,
So
I
Let's
do. I
talk about
mean,
that.
just broadly, I would love to just raise the frequency of the planet, right? Through the gay community, right? That's as broad, pretty broad.
Hmm.
On a more um, almost smaller scale, I want to help millions of queer people in general, not just men. This is obviously on the long run. Right now,
That's a smaller scale.
or like more specific, I meant,
No,
sorry.
I'm joking. Yeah, yeah, individually, because it's one
You know,
person at a time.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, one at a time, maybe groups at a time. But, I want to, break the shackles of their past and really do what happened with me, right? And turn their pain into their purpose. And I know not everybody is meant to be a healer, but it still doesn't mean that they're not artists, that they can't be planners, they can't, we need everything. We need all of it. And I think that's what I want to do is help queer community find their actual purpose, something that fulfills them, that brings them true joy and true passion, and not, the almost like band-aid passion and fun that we see as like going out, which is
Yeah.
it's not, it doesn't fulfill you, it doesn't fulfill anybody, no matter what they do.
Yes.
It's
Yes. I totally get that. There's a lot of surface solutions, band-aid solutions that, help us gives us this instant gratification, but really in the long run, it doesn't change much. So at this current moment in your life, what is your dream client? How would you describe your dream client, and why is it that you want to work with them? It's kind of similar to what you were saying, but let's just be a bit more specific here. What's your dream client, and why do you want to help them
I
or
think my
work with them?
absolute soulmate client right now
Mm-hmm.
would be a queer man, doesn't matter the age, but someone that is in a transition of their life, right? And so they need the guidance. They don't have any guidance in any other way, right? They're not super close with their family, or they don't have a good support system. And so they would need to turn to me, right? But someone that's kind of feeling a little lost and knows there's more out there than what is advertised for us as a community, right? Um, Someone that has already tried maybe different modalities like therapy, and has gotten nowhere. Um, who's read the self-help books and they're done, right? Trying to just like read their way through their problems. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and someone who's like truly ready, right? Just like ready. Like I want almost like the same passion that I, bring to a session. I want them to also bring to
Yeah,
me.
to be like excited about trying to do this
Yeah,
work, right?
yeah, because I remember I was like, okay, because I remember when I was in their position, I was excited.
Mm-hmm.
I was not even thinking of me in that moment. I was like already wanting like the next step, right? Like I was like already seeing myself doing what the coach was doing. And so for them, it could be anything, right? But if they're feeling a little lost, then I can help them find that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just people kind of searching for validation and just wanting to end that. Someone who knows there's more to life than boys and booze.
Is that? Just kidding, just kidding.
I mean, part of it. It's for sure part of it.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think that's not just the gay community. There probably a lot of viewers could relate. Yeah, that's beautiful. I think it's always we want to kind of guide the ones that are similar to what we experience in our journey. And I think, the certification is one thing, but it is your life experience that gives you all the wisdom and the capability of actually helping and guiding another person through it, because you kind of walk that path yourself, right? So you know exactly the layers that they can discover through different types of emotions that are going to be popping up and all that kind of stuff that you can't really read in the books, or they're not you got to experience it to actually truly know what's going on inside someone's head. So that's beautiful. That may be a little tricky question, but let's see if you have an answer. What is your superpower?
Oof. I have many. I have many.
Oh, okay.
But I think one of my biggest ones right now is definitely making people feel comfortable. with, with just my personality. You
Mm-hmm.
humor, right? And they're trying to, it's a little poke of when I see somebody
Mm-hmm.
too serious, there's no need for that, you know?
Yeah.
Just when I come into a group, I'm always feeling a little like, "Ugh." And so I try to be like, okay, what do I need? And so I try to give that to other people. And so that's why I think that's something that I notice in myself.
Mm. Once you while you're talking about it, I feel like because I know you've done this. The recent photo shoot that we did pops to my mind, and I'm thinking that actually what you're doing is you are bringing our inner child into the surface. You allowing us to play, be playful, be joyful, put those walls that we've put up to like drop them down, and like you give us space to just be who we are, and attract that joyfulness in us, which is very beautiful. So I would totally agree with that superpower from my own experience. So yeah, that's cool, that's cool that you see it as well. And last question really is, do you have any tip or an advice for people on this journey, whether it's your soul client or just anyone out there that is on their own healing or awakening journey? What would be your best advice today?
I do want to answer this, but I want to hear your superpower first.
Oh, I need to give. Okay. Well, it's hard to do just one, right? I
Or at
would
least
say to be curious and non-judgmental is what I like to always say, because that kind of gives you the freedom to actually explore and go in even on into those darkest alleys that you're gonna have to be going. So curiosity and non-judgment is something that I've only kind of discovered or embodied truly this year, and that was the biggest game changer in the way I approach things and how quickly things started changing, because I stopped judging myself. I stopped doing all these stories and feeling unworthy. And that came through curiosity and non-judgment. So those two words, that would be my biggest advice. Just approach everything on this journey with non-judgment and curiosity.
That's so big because a lot of us are already judgmental to begin with, right? As a
Yeah, that's a
couple.
conditioning we have. Yeah.
And so that's actually, I love that because, and I've noticed that even in our conversations, you are very, like, it's just like a blanket non-judgment, which I love because I can
Thank
be
you.
pretty judgmental with
Trust
myself.
me, I had to train myself. Like, I'm Polish, so there's that. I feel like I always love that, our culture, everything is judgmental.
Yeah.
So it's definitely hasn't been that I was always this non-judgmental. I think it's good to be honest with yourself as well, like it's okay if you were or if you still are, but you can train yourself, you can change it, you can get that compassion, right? And just work on it. Like that definitely wasn't my default. Let's just put it out there for transparency.
Love it. Okay, so to answer your last question,
Mhm.
if I were to give a piece of advice, I think right now, because I almost need this advice too, is to not give up, right? And
Mm.
because I mentioned this earlier that healing is not linear, right? You keep working almost through the same wounds, maybe just like a different face of it, right? Like a different side. And I mean, maybe 2023 was rough for a lot of us, as I've heard that from many different people, right?
Collectively, a lot of people move through a lot of stuff. Yes.
And so I feel like I really needed to hear that and to not give up because it can be so easy to go back to your patterns and go back to who you used to be and and just like shrink. But
Mm-hmm.
courage to not give up and stick to your routines and stick to what makes you feel good, right? Because something that I didn't realize before is like when you really commit to yourself and you really commit to prioritizing your mental health, your well-being, just making yourself feel good, it's tough sometimes. It's tough because that also means that you have to discern if what you're gonna do is, at the end of the day, is gonna make you feel good or is gonna make you feel bad, right? Depending on what pattern you're you're thinking.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's easy to be like, okay, well, and then I'll use this just as an example. Like, I'm gonna eat this cookie, right, for someone that's trying to lose weight.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but even though it feels good for that second, for this like purpose, like the feeling good is like you want to feel good at the end when you know, feel good in your body, feel confident in your body, right? And so I maybe that's like two advices put together, right? It's like
No, that's,
don't give up.
it kind of all joins together anyway. Like it's like a big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe like don't give up because of like what like your goal, right, is what you're going after, right? Like you
Yeah, and I think it's important to note as well that sometimes exactly you would go like 3 steps ahead and then boom, you're going to be like 5 steps behind. And that's when a lot of people would give up because they're like, well, I'm clearly doing something wrong if I move back. But that's what non-linear means. Because like for me, I've heard this sentence so many times, oh, healing is non-linear. And I'm like, well, what does that really mean? Like what the hell does that mean? And then I was like, oh, so it's going a bit ahead and then coming kind of feels like you're pulled back, but that's just normal. That's what it means. Like it's gonna be, it's like that, it's like a wave. You're gonna go high and then you're gonna go a little lower, and then as long as you feel that this is the right thing for you to do, just keep going and not give up and believe and kind of trust the process as well. Like all those things come to mind, right? So it's a very complex, but yeah, I think don't give up is a huge advice as well, because a lot of us just try to do that, well, basically because we judge ourselves, right? Judge our progress or maybe compare our progress to someone else, and then we're like, well, I'm not doing it right. But however it pops up for you, it's as long as you keep going, choosing kindness and believing that you can do better, be better, then you're on the right track, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this was an amazing chat, Martine. Thank you so much. Maybe let us know where can our audience find you? What's the best place to contact you? Or like follow your story, follow what you offer. What is the best place to find you?
You find me on TikTok and Instagram. My DMs are open on both. And it's at I am Martin Diaz. This is
Martin Diaz.
Mhm. Yeah, which I'm sure you'll link in the show notes.
Yes, I think I will figure out how to do that. All right. Well, thank you so much. And I wish you a beautiful day. And it's been an honor and my biggest pleasure to have you as my first guest on this little interview podcast thing that we'll be doing this year. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you thrive this year, to bring your vision into life. I have all the faith in you and believe that you will help so many people and guide so many people into their greatness. And yeah, it's going to be amazing to see you thrive as well.
Thanks so much for having me, Maggie. I love you.
I love you too. Bye. Okay.